My sister put her hand on my boyfriend's knee and said, "I'd treat you better." I smiled and walked away. That was the last mistake she ever made. By the time Claire drove home that night, I had already opened a new folder on my desktop and named it with the date. The folder sat there, quiet and patient, the way I had learned to be quiet and patient, and I added the first item, Ryan's voice note, still warm from the call, before I even changed out of my work clothes. The apartment smelled like the candle Ryan had lit earlier, something with cedar and orange peel that he'd bought at a farmer's market in October and been burning in pieces ever since. I remember standing at the kitchen counter and being aware of the smell the way you become aware of your own breathing, sudden and slightly too loud. The candle was nearly down to the glass. I remember thinking I should tell him to blow it out before it cracked the holder. I didn't say anything. I pulled my laptop toward me, opened the folder, and started a new text document. At the top, I typed the date and the time, then I typed what Ryan had told me, word for word, as close as I could get it. Her exact phrasing. The way she had crossed her legs first. The way she had let her hand rest there without any preamble, without any pretense of it being accidental. The way someone sets down something they have decided belongs to them. I typed it all out, and I saved the file, and I closed the laptop, and I did not sleep until almost 3 in the morning. Claire is 2 years younger than me. That is relevant only because it means she had 2 full years to watch how I operated before she started practicing it herself. She watched who I sat with at lunch, which teachers I liked, which side of the hallway I walked on, and then she rotated everything by just enough degrees that she could claim it was her own. When I was 14 and had a crush on a boy named Marcus who played guitar badly and wore the same hoodie every day, Claire showed up to school the next Monday in her tightest jeans and sat across from him in the cafeteria and laughed loudly at everything he said. Marcus was confused. I was humiliated. Claire looked at me from across the room with an expression I can only describe now as satisfaction that she had remembered to make look like innocence. My parents noticed it the way parents notice things they don't want to be true, in pieces, over years, hoping each piece was an outlier. When I got a new bike at 12, Claire cried for 6 hours until my father drove back to the store and bought a second one. When I made varsity soccer at 15, Claire quit the junior squad and told everyone she had a knee injury. When I got into the University of Michigan, Claire applied the following year, was rejected, and spent the next 4 months telling every family friend that I had only gotten in because of a teacher recommendation from someone who had dated my mother in college, which was a story she had constructed entirely from nothing. My mother's college boyfriend was a man named Gerald who sold insurance in Dayton and had not spoken to our family since 1987. None of that mattered. Claire said it with such calm specificity, which I now understand is a skill, not a quality, that 3 people believed her for over a year. Ryan and I had been together for 2 years and 4 months when she came to his apartment. We had met at a work event. He was in supply chain consulting, I was in marketing for a mid-sized pharmaceutical company, and we had spent the first 6 months being cautious and the next year and a half being sure. He had a way of recounting conversations that I had always liked, detailed and fair, the way a person talks when they are trying to understand something rather than win an argument. When he called me from his apartment that afternoon at 2:14 p.m., I was in a meeting that I had to excuse myself from to take the call. And the way he said my name when I picked up, careful, not panicked, but careful. I knew before he said the next sentence that Claire had finally made her move. He told me everything. She had knocked on the door with a bottle of Malbec and an excuse about a book she had borrowed from me that she was certain he had somewhere. He had not invited her in, but she had come in anyway, the way Claire entered spaces, as if the invitation were a formality she was willing to overlook. She had sat on the couch, asked about his week, poured herself a glass of the wine she had brought without asking if he wanted any, crossed her legs, and put her hand on his knee while maintaining full eye contact. And then she said it. "If you ever get bored with my sister, you know I'd treat you better." He had stood up immediately, told her to leave, and she had gathered her coat and her bottle, still more than half full, and walked out without changing her expression. He called me before she had even reached the elevator. When I confronted Claire that evening, I drove to her apartment rather than calling because I wanted to see her face. She opened the door in a silk robe and bare feet, holding a glass of the same Malbec, and she looked at me the way she had looked at me across the cafeteria when I was 14, measuring, satisfied, already deciding how to frame the next sentence. I told her what Ryan had told me. She tilted her head slightly to the left, which I had clocked years ago as her tell, the physical gesture she made when she was deciding which version of a lie to use, and said it was a test. She was testing him for me. I should be thanking her. "He passed," she said, as if that were the point. As if the point had ever been anything other than the fact of her hand on his knee. I said I understood. I said I needed some time to process. I hugged her at the door and drove home and opened the folder and added a new file. That was enough. The pattern that followed was not subtle, but it was patient, which is the more dangerous combination. Over the next 6 weeks, Ryan began forwarding me everything. The texts she sent him asking if he wanted to grab coffee and catch up as future brother-in-law and sister-in-law, which is a phrase she used twice and which I noted both times. The LinkedIn connection request from a profile called Claire M., professional headshot, corporate bio, that had been created the previous Tuesday and had no connections except Ryan and 2 accounts that appeared to be duplicates. He accepted the request without responding, and I documented the profile with screenshots and timestamps before reporting it to LinkedIn. The account was removed within 48 hours. Claire told our mother that LinkedIn had glitched and deleted her real profile. Our mother relayed this to me 2 days later as information, not suspicion. I said that was strange and changed the subject. She showed up at Ryan's office building on a Thursday morning at 7:43 a.m. I know the time because the lobby security log Ryan requested later would record it exactly. She was dressed well. She was always dressed well. A camel coat, dark jeans, ankle boots, and she approached the coffee cart in the lobby and asked the barista, a college student named Marco who would would later write a brief statement for us what Ryan's usual order was. She said she was his girlfriend's sister, and it was a surprise. Marco gave her the order. A woman named Priya, who worked in Ryan's building and had met me at the company holiday party the previous December, recognized Claire from a photo Ryan had shown her once, texted him from the elevator, and Ryan called me before he had even reached his desk. Claire waited in the lobby for 11 minutes. When Ryan did not come down, she left. Marco kept the memory of the interaction. Priya kept the texts. The fake job meeting came 2 weeks later. A message from a LinkedIn account. Different name, same photo style, same slightly formal sentence rhythm that Claire used when she was trying to sound professional, offering a consulting project to Ryan at a coffee shop in River North. The message was careful. It read, like a real opportunity. But she had used an M- in the second sentence in a place no one uses an M-, and Ryan had forwarded me a text Claire sent to our cousin Melissa's boyfriend the previous spring about a restaurant recommendation, and the M- was there too. Same position, same context. I pulled both texts up side by side and photographed the screen. I added the image to the folder. Ryan declined the meeting politely and never heard from that account again. The photo she sent to 3 of our mutual friends was the most brazen. She had cropped the dates out of the screenshots, but she had not cropped out a detail in the background of one of the images. A framed photo in Ryan's apartment of the 2 of us at his cousin's wedding, which only existed in the world because I had given him a print for his birthday in August of the previous year. In the screenshot, the framed photo was visible over his left shoulder. The message Claire had fabricated, Ryan supposedly texting her that he found her interesting, that things with me were complicated, allegedly came from a conversation in February. The framed photo had not existed in his apartment in February. It had been a birthday gift in August. I enlarged the background image, marked the detail with a red circle, sent the original and the annotated version to all 3 friends on the same day Claire had sent her version, and included the receipt from the print shop time-stamped August 14th. All 3 of them called me within an hour. Then she came to my office. I want to describe this carefully because I want you to understand exactly what she was doing and exactly what it cost her. It was a Tuesday in November, 11:47 in the morning, and I was in a glass-walled conference room on the 4th floor when my phone showed a notification from the building's lobby camera, which Ryan had suggested I set up on my personal account after the office building visit because he is the kind of person who thinks ahead without making a performance of it. The notification was a motion alert. I opened the feed. Claire was standing in the lobby of my building in a bright red dress and heels, holding a gift bag with white tissue paper folded out of the top. She was speaking to the front desk security guard, a man named Robert who has worked that lobby for 11 years and who I had spoken to specifically and by name 3 weeks before, who I had told, quietly and with specificity, that if a woman matching her description arrived claiming to be my sister, he should hold her at the desk and call me before allowing her through. Robert called me at 11:48. I watched on the camera feed while I was on the phone with him. Claire was explaining that it was our mother's birthday and she had a gift. She was smiling the smile she used when she wanted to be perceived as harmless, the one where her chin dipped slightly and her voice went just half a step softer. Robert kept his expression completely neutral. He said he would need to call upstairs. Claire's smile held. 2 other employees I recognized passed through the lobby. They slowed, they looked. Claire became aware that she was being looked at and something in her posture shifted. Barely, just a fraction. The way a person shifts when they realize the room is not arranged the way they assumed. Our mother's birthday was in March. It was November. Security escorted her out at 11:59. I know because I watched it happen on my phone and noted the time in the document I had already opened on my laptop in the conference room. She argued with them near the revolving door. She held her phone up and recorded the guards. 3 people standing outside the building filmed her on their phones. I requested the lobby security footage that afternoon. Robert provided a written account of the interaction. I added everything to the folder. 22 minutes after she left, a text came from an unknown number. A photo of herself crying in the driver's seat of her car. Mascara and 2 clean lines down her face. The gift bag visible on the passenger seat. You humiliated me in front of everyone. I just wanted to give you mom's gift. You're so cruel. I screenshot the text, I screenshot the number, I screenshot the timestamp. I added all 3 to the folder. Then I went back into my meeting. Derek Okafor reached out to me on a Wednesday evening in December, and I want to be clear about who Derek was, because it matters. He was not a friend of mine. He was Claire's ex-boyfriend from college, someone I had met perhaps 4 times over 3 years, a quiet man who wore glasses and worked in urban planning, and who I had categorized, if I had categorized him at all, as perfectly decent and entirely peripheral. His message came through Instagram, which I found interesting because it suggested he had thought about how to reach me without alerting Claire, whose contacts on any platform I might share. The message said only, I heard what's been happening, I think we need to talk. Can I call you? His voice was tight when I called him back. Not emotional exactly, controlled in the way of someone who has rehearsed being controlled about a thing for a long time. He told me that Claire had done the same thing to his girlfriend, a woman named Amber, when they were 22 and 23. She had shown up at Amber's workplace, she had slashed the tires on Derek's car, she had gotten a copy of his apartment key through means he never fully determined, and let herself in while he was at a family event and cut up every item of Amber's clothing that had been left there. Every single item. He emailed me 3 police reports while we were still on the phone. Real case numbers. Filed in Cook County in 2019. Harassment, criminal damage to property, unlawful entry. Blair had agreed to attend 6 months of therapy to have the charges reduced and eventually dropped. Derek knew because he had later requested confirmation from the therapist's office through a mutual contact that she had attended exactly 0 sessions. She had told her family, his family, and every mutual friend they had that she had completed the full program. She had moved back home afterward claiming that Derek had been emotionally abusive throughout their relationship relationship, and that the incidents in question were a response to his treatment of her. I sat with that for a moment after we hung up. The architecture of it, the way the story she had built had load-bearing walls in it, things other people had said they believed, things that had become established enough that no one had questioned them. She was good at construction. I had to give her that. I forwarded the reports to both my parents within an hour of hanging up with Derek. My father called back before I had put my phone down. My mother texted asking if we could meet the next morning, that she had a 9 o'clock that would free her by 10, that Claire had mentioned something about a job interview. We met at an Intelligentsia coffee shop on the north side at 10:14 in the morning. My mother arrived before me and was already seated and already crying, quietly, hands wrapped around a ceramic mug, not attracting attention, just leaking. She started before I had fully sat down. She said she had always known. Not everything, but the shape of it. She had known the shape of it since Claire was 9 years old, and she had watched Claire watch me, and she had told herself it was rivalry, and told herself it was a phase, and told herself each new incident was an outlier until she had spent 20 years assembling a structure made entirely of outliers. Then she told me about the prom dress. I had not known about the prom dress. I had known that the dress was ruined. I had known my mother had rushed to the mall the morning of prom to find a replacement. I had been told at the time that it had been an accident, that it had fallen from the hanger and been damaged somehow in a way that was never fully explained. What I had not known was that my mother, going to hang it back up the morning before prom, had found it on the floor of my closet in 7 pieces, cut with the kitchen scissors that were still on the floor beside it, and had looked across the hall at Claire's closed bedroom door, and had made a decision in that hallway that she had spent the subsequent 11 years quietly paying for. She had not told me, she had not told my father. She had replaced the dress and told me it was an accident, and tried to get Claire into therapy at 16, which Claire had refused with enough screaming and enough implied threats toward herself that my parents had backed down out of fear, and had continued backing down in one form or another every time since. My mother looked at me across the table with the hollow, exhausted expression of someone who has been carrying something very heavy for a very long time, and who has just been told they can put it down but doesn't quite know yet how to stop holding the shape. That was the biggest mistake we ever made, she said. My attorney's name is Patricia Vance. She had been recommended to me by a woman in my office who had used her in a dispute involving a former business partner, and I had called her, on Ryan's suggestion, approximately 3 weeks after the apartment visit. Not because I had known what I was building yet, more because something in me had understood, watching Claire tilt her head in her doorway, that I was going to need someone who could receive information without reacting to it. Patricia received information without reacting to it. She was in her mid-50s, wore the same style of plain dark blazer in every meeting I had with her, and had a quality of stillness that I recognized as something she had cultivated deliberately over a long career of sitting across from people who believed their situation was unique. She looked at the folder, all of it, the texts, the police reports, the screenshots, the lobby footage, the security logs, the photo of Claire in her car, Derek's statement, Marco's statement, Priya's statement, my mother's written account of the prom dress, and she did not change her expression once. Then she said, "This is more than enough." The civil harassment order hearing was scheduled for a Thursday morning at the Daily Center. Patricia had filed in late November, and we had spent the intervening weeks gathering signatures and notarizing statements and double-checking timestamps. Ryan had written his own account, 6 pages, specific and unadorned. Derek had written his, Priya had written hers. My mother had written hers, which I knew had cost her more than any document she had ever signed in her life. Patricia reviewed each one, made small notations in the margins, and told me we were going to be fine. The night before the hearing, at 11:47 p.m., my phone lit up with a message from an unknown number. "Drop this, or you'll regret it. I have something that will destroy everything you think you've built." Ryan was sitting beside me on the couch. He read it over my shoulder and went completely still, and I felt his breathing change the way you feel a change in air pressure before weather arrives. Neither of us spoke. I forwarded the message to Patricia immediately. 2 hours later, a photo arrived in my email. No subject line, no message, just an image. And I want to tell you what it was because it matters to what happened next. It was a photograph of me, taken from a distance, walking to my car in the parking garage under my building. I was alone. It was clearly nighttime. The image was grainy in the way of long-distance cameras, but clear enough to identify me without question. It was taken from a position that required someone to have been standing in a section of the garage that was not a public area. I forwarded it to Patricia. I forwarded it to building security. I called the non-emergency police line and filed a report. I sat on the couch with Ryan until 2:30 in the morning, and then I lay down and watched the ceiling and thought about the fact that Claire had, in one evening, added stalking to the existing documentation, and that a judge was going to see this image at 9 o'clock the next morning. The courtroom on the 7th floor of the Daily Center was smaller than I had expected. My parents sat in the gallery. Derek sat beside them, which I had not anticipated and which I saw surprise my mother when he came in. Patricia stood at the table to my left, her blazer exactly like all the others, her hands flat on the table, unhurried. Claire arrived with a man I didn't recognize, who turned out to be a family friend's son she had convinced to accompany her as a character witness. He was in his late 20s and wearing a tie that was too wide. He looked uncomfortable from the moment he sat down. Claire wore a navy dress and a pearl necklace and the expression of someone who has rehearsed the story they intend to tell and finds it convincing. She did not look at me when she sat down. She looked at the judge. Patricia presented the documentation in order. The texts, the police reports, Derek's statement which the judge read in full while Claire's companion's expression visibly changed in real time, the lobby footage played on a tablet, Robert's written account, the photo from the parking garage, the threatening text from the previous evening. Claire's representation argued that the photo and the text had not been proven to originate from my sister. Patricia had a cell tower analysis prepared by the provider, requested 3 days earlier when Patricia had anticipated exactly this, which showed the message had been sent from a device registered to Claire's address. The judge looked at it, looked at Claire. Claire's expression did not break, but her hands, folded on the table, pressed together harder than they had been a minute before. The character witness was asked a single question. Had he ever personally witnessed my sister engage in any of the behaviors described in the filing? He said no. The judge thanked him and moved on. He sat back in his chair and looked at the ceiling in the particular way of a man who is calculating how quickly he can leave. Then my mother was asked if she would like to address the court. She stood. She was wearing a gray suit I had seen her wear to my cousin's graduation and to 2 funerals. She read from her written statement in a voice that did not waver once. When she reached the portion about the prom dress, I watched Claire's face for the first time since we had sat down. There it was, the left tilting head, the recalculation, the almost imperceptible moment of understanding that the story she had been building since she was 16 years old, the story in which our mother did not know, in which she was protected, in which there was a version of events she controlled, was not the story being read aloud in this room. The order was granted at 11:52 a.m. 3 years. No contact. 100 feet minimum distance from me, from Ryan, from my workplace. Patricia had also filed the civil suit the previous week, naming harassment, stalking, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and defamation related to the fake screenshot messages sent to mutual friends. That case would take 11 more months to resolve. The settlement was $47,000, paid in 2 installments, the second of which arrived the following April. Derek's criminal case from 2019 was reviewed by the Cook County State's Attorney's Office after Patricia submitted a referral noting that Claire had violated the terms of her agreement by not attending therapy. The charges could not be reinstated at that point, but the review resulted in a formal notation in the case record. The state's attorney's office opened a separate inquiry into the parking garage photograph. That inquiry concluded 4 months later with a misdemeanor stalking charge, to which Claire pleaded guilty in exchange for 18 months of supervised probation and mandatory weekly therapy sessions, attendance of which was verified monthly by her probation officer and reported to the court. Ryan and I moved into a 2-bedroom apartment on the north side of Chicago that spring. We bought a dining table from a shop on Milwaukee Avenue and spent an entire Saturday assembling it incorrectly and then correctly. I made a playlist for the occasion that I never deleted. The intelligentsia near my mother's house closed that August, and she started going to a place 2 blocks further that she said was better anyway. Derek emailed me the following Christmas to say that Amber had received an apology from Claire as part of her probation requirements, that Amber had not responded to it, and that he thought that was the right call. I wrote back to say I agreed. We haven't spoken since. My mother and I have coffee on the 3rd Sunday of every month. She never brings up the prom dress. Neither do I. She knows I know, she knows I know. That's enough for both of us. The family friend's son who came to court as Claire's character witness sent me a LinkedIn connection request 14 months later. I declined it. Claire has a therapist now who she is required by law to see. I have no way of knowing what she says in those sessions. I don't need to. She got what she asked for.